Welcome back, Tiger fans, to Rockin' Radio's football podcast. I'm Nate Edwards. That's Nathan Hurst. This is Before the Box Score, your post-combine edition. Yeah, post-combine, spring game, which is not happening, but spring practice is happening. We'll get into that a little bit. But yeah, welcome to spring football, where nothing is happening and everything's happening. Nathan Hurst, how are you doing?
I'm doing fine. It was a little peeved to find out that there was not going to be a spring game this time around, just because it's a fun event to go to. Not that it was ever valuable for anything beyond a nice Saturday afternoon at Furrow Field, which you only get a few of those a year anyway. But otherwise, I've been able to emotionally recover from that loss and grieved, and now I've moved on.
Let's start there. Let's get that out of the way. Is the black and gold game worth anything? No, not really. You don't learn.
Not for the team.
You don't learn anything. No positions are decided. Nothing is going to be determined that's going to affect the fall other than injuries. It is a big old stinking nothing event for the team and for the coaches. It's just another opportunity to get out in public. But that's why it's important. You have to be part of the public. And don't throw out we're renovating the end zone. So we've had spring games with torn up fields before. We did it 5 years ago. We did it 10 years ago. That's not the excuse. You just get these coaches who are like these little Napoleons who have to work in this cloak and dagger because oh my God, if you see any of our plays, then you're going to beat me in the fall. Oh my God. And now with the added flavor of, if you get to see us play, then you get to poach our players in the spring portal window. Oh, can't have that. My God. There's nothing more paranoid in the world than a college football head coach. I remain convinced that is the case. It's fun, man. It's fun. And if you want to go out there and just play dodgeball for 2 hours, I guarantee you members of Columbia, Missouri will donate 2 cans of green beans to go watch you play dodgeball for 2 hours and sign autographs. Is it really that big of a deal? Can you not do that? I am miffed by this. Hurst, your thoughts?
Yeah. I mean, it's fan service. It's for the fans who pay your salaries, and make the whole thing go around. So it's just part of a long, slow decline. And this is not specific to Mizzou by any means, but decline where less and less consideration for fans every year, and why we do what we do, why we care about this thing called college football or college sports in general. It's less and less every year. And this is just another example. And Mizzou is not far from the only school that's not having a spring game this year. So this isn't critical of just Eli Drinkwitz or the Mizzou program. Now, come up with a better excuse than the stadium renovations. I mean, give me a break. But it's for the fans. You don't have to play a real game. They didn't really play a real game last year. They played 2-hand touch, and they didn't have real rosters, and they mixed up people. And I saw a lot of passes by walk-on quarterbacks, and but I enjoyed myself for 2 hours on a Saturday, a nice weather Saturday afternoon. Bought a hot dog, let my kid jump on the bounce house, and get some autographs at the end of the game. It was a fun time. It's a fun way to spend an afternoon and stay connected with the program. And is this program in a place where it needs to connect with fans locally? Probably not right now. Now, if this was Drinkwitz's first year on the job and he's trying to, win hearts and minds, maybe. But he's pretty well established at this point. At that same time, though, you can never have too much goodwill. You can never foster too much with that positive community feeling, especially with you're one season away from having a downturn, and all of a sudden everyone's against you, and you think you would be looking for all the possible ways to continue to just do something for easy and fun and free and painless, and 2 hours out of a Saturday afternoon that otherwise he'd be spending playing golf, and the players would be hanging out in the dorm room.
I think they'd be practicing. So I get that, but I agree with your second part. It's painless. And you can never have too much goodwill. And now I'm not going to sit here and tell you exactly what the logistics of putting on the black and gold game is. I feel like it's a pretty low logistics bar to clear, but I don't know for sure. But it doesn't hurt anything. And you can never have too much goodwill. You can never be connected enough to the community that you're in, right? NFL teams have open practices in the fall. You can literally walk out there and watch them practice. Okay. They sign autographs afterwards. That's the highest level of football. And they say, yeah, come to our practices and do whatever. We don't care. We don't care. But at college, no. No. Literally the aspect of sport that is the closest to an individual community decides to rope it off, put up the fences. Fortress University football team. No one gets in. No one gets to see us. It's silly. It's a self-inflicted wound. And I'm not saying, my kid got an autograph from Eli Drinkwitz, therefore I'm not going to be mad when he loses the game. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying foster some goodwill just in general. Show them that you're people. Show them that you care. Kids love that stuff. Like you said, it's fun. It's fun. And there's no stress. Even when you go into a game in the fall, even if it's against the FCS team, there's like a buzz of stress, right? Like what's going to happen? I don't know. It's nice to be in for row and not just like, this is nice. No, nothing bad's going to happen. We can just enjoy being here. It's silly. It's silly to think that you shouldn't be doing that. And frankly, if I were a football coach, would I have a black and gold game? No, probably not. I'd probably have a black and gold event. Bring out some, if you donate X amount of canned goods or whatever, you get to go down on the field and throw passes to Kevin Coleman. You get tackled by Tristan Newsom. I don't know. It probably falls into a liability issue that we can't really cross there, but you get the idea, right? Like just get out there, have some fun with the players, be community oriented. I don't feel like this is hard. And again, do I go to black and gold games? No, I don't. I live in St. Louis. But if I was around and I had kids and I needed something to do on a Saturday that was cheap and easy, boy, I would be there every single year, just like you would. So it's frustrating. And I hope that there isn't enough outcry from missing this one that Missouri and Drinkwitz and friends changed their mind, because the school down south is doing one and went up and made a huge deal about the fact that they're doing one. And they're not the only ones. I would appreciate some events to do that. So I'll get off my soapbox. Any last thoughts on that?
No, I mean, as you said, you don't have to have an actual game. I mean, they really didn't have a game last year. Yeah. So miss me with our players are going to get poached or whatever from this. I mean, that's a crock. So you could do an event, you could do something. It's fine. It's not the end of the world. It's just, it seems short-sighted when the best way to build a larger fan base, and this program is trying to always be building a larger, more established fan base that can support it financially in a way that a lot of other SEC programs do, and Mizzou is still kind of following behind. The way you do that is you start getting kids in there when they are young, and kids are much more likely to come to a free event like this and start learning to love Mizzou football at the age of 5 when they're at a free event than their parents having to buy them a $30, $50, $80 ticket to get them to go to to bring them to the one game a year that they might get to go. And that's the only time they get to see Mizzou football live. So it's it's short-sighted. Is Drinkwitz thinking about kids who are 5 now and aren't going to be paying members of society for at least 20 years? No, he's not concerned about that. But Laird Beach should be, and the board of curators should be, because that's how you build a program the size of the ones that we're competing with year in and year out.
Brady Cook loved Mizzou from childhood. Went to the games. I'm sure he went to black and gold games. Does that exist if he doesn't go there? I don't know. But that's, again, to your point, that's how you foster connection. And if you care about Mizzou athletes coming to Mizzou, maybe you should work hard on creating that connection. Now, this is not the only way to do it, but it's a great way to do it. So anyway.
And it's a free one. It's relatively free. I'm sure there's a little cost to put it on, but it's marginal in the grand scheme of things. So
yes. Silly. Let's talk about something good. NFL Combine happened. Missouri players seem to do well. First and foremost, Armand Mimbu. Get that bag, son. My goodness. I mean, he entered the combine as one of the top rated tackles and then demonstrated an athletic repertoire that apparently has him in the top 10 now. Including cresting the 6'4" mark by just a little bit. Missouri had him listed at 6'3". I guess he was slouching a little bit. But pick your stat: 40-yard, the long jump, height, weight, arm span, like things that they had questions about. He cleared, and his athleticism and his physical nature and his tape from the past 3 years. When has Missouri had a top 10 offensive lineman picked? I don't think it's been ever. Correct? Maybe Russ Washington.
I can't think of one.
I have to look up. Maybe Washington.
I mean, when's the last time we had a first round offensive lineman picked in the first round?
That's a good point.
But he's a lock for the first round at this point.
All right, Russ Washington, round 1, pick 4. That's what you're looking for. Russ Washington, who played in Missouri, he got drafted in 1968. Round 1, pick 4. So it's been a long time.
And he probably weighed 250 pounds.
Let's find out.
If that, because that was a different era.
Sure. He was 6'6", allegedly, and 289 pounds. He was a monster back then.
Yeah, big dude.
That's being 7 foot 400 now.
I guarantee you Russ Washington did not run a 4.91 40-yard dash like Armand Mimbu did.
I would agree.
I guarantee you he did not do that. I also guarantee you he didn't have a 34-inch vertical jump at 330 pounds like Armand Mimbu did. For reference, Theo Weiss also participated. He did the vertical jump. He jumped 31 inches. So Armand Mimbu, 130 pounds heavier than Theo, who's a good athlete. We watched him play for the last few years. Very good athlete. Armand Mimbu out-jumped Theo Weiss by 3 full inches, even though he weighed 130 more pounds. That is outrageous. Outrageous. So he's earned himself a lot of money, not only with his tape, which he was moving into the late first round just from scouts looking at his tape from the last year, really the last 2 years, because he's been excellent for a couple of years now. But then he shows up at the Underwear Olympics and is in every metric the best metric of all the offensive linemen in the class in every single one. Best at fastest player, best broad jump, best vertical jump, best cone drill, or whatever their little agility thing is. So he's made himself a lot of money. Good for you, Armand. Carry it forward for us. Remember us in 20 years when you're retiring with your 10 figure, making 10 figures in the NFL.
Yeah, pride of Lee Summit. Yeah, that's great. And with Mitch Morse retiring today, we are due for our next great Missouri offensive lineman to have a long career, and hopefully it is Mimbu. But let's not forget his peers. Luther Burden had a great day. A lot of people said great things about Luther Burden. Their questions about him, I think, stemmed mostly from last year, where he had his targets cut by 41, his production cut in half, and what the heck happened? But his athleticism was on display. I think it quieted a couple of detractors. We'll see what happens as they get into the draft. It sounds like he's outside the first round right now, but we got many months to go. And also, who cares about mocks? And then Brady Cook, man, I knew he was going to interview well. I figured his character would get him some looks, but I don't know, man. He looked pretty good spinning the ball, certainly better than he did last year. How do we feel about Burden and Cook's performance at the combine?
Yeah, I mean, Burden, I think any Mizzou fan knew the type of athlete that Burden was. He really just needed to come in and the 40-yard dash was what he needed to show out on, and he did. 4.41 is a very good time for a wide receiver. It's not the fastest guy in the draft this year as a receiver, but that's fine because his speed, his straight line speed, is not what makes him a special player. It's his ability to miss tackles and break tackles and find his way down the field one way or another over and over and over again. So that's what he just needed to show, that he did have NFL caliber straight line speed, which he more than did today, at the combine. That's about all that we really learned, or scouts could have even learned from that. The fact that he's fallen a little bit, I think, is silly. I think it's the case of people overanalyzing and getting bored with whose names have been at the top of the list for a long time, so they want to shuffle it up. And wait another month and his name could creep back up there. So I think he'll be fine. Brady Cook, we knew is a good athlete. I don't think we knew he was as good an athlete as he showed out in the combine. He had some really good numbers. 4.59 40-yard dash is really good. 37-inch vertical jump, which was excellent. So good athlete, good athletic numbers, which isn't a shock by any means. But I'm not sure he'll end up getting drafted. There's so many quarterbacks in this draft, and a big glob of them that are all about the same. So it just takes one team. But he'll find his way into a camp in the fall somewhere.
And I do think that plays to his chance of getting drafted, because there's no real standouts in the quarterback draft class this year, at least not yet.
After the top 4 or 5 guys that have been established, but there's 15 other guys that could go in the 5th, 6th, 7th round. He could easily, be one of those guys.
Yeah. So, I mean, quarterbacks are expensive. They're always going to be expensive. So, someone like Brady Cook is most likely going to be an undrafted free agent. Like that's fine. Getting a shot is all you really need. Just ask Cody Schrader. But yeah, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that he's going to be a 5th or 6th round pick. Maybe he does, but if you're falling that far at that point, you should probably just go undrafted free agent and pick the spot that's going to be best for you. But we'll see. I mean, only positive things said about Brady Cook throughout the combine. Same things for Luther Burden, and credit to all 3 of the guys, all 4 of them, including Theo Weiss, not only for showing up and doing well, but also saying, why isn't Johnny Walker here? That's such a baller move from the brotherhood, the Mizzou brotherhood that Eli Drinkwitz talks about so much. To spend your time on the mic and say Johnny Walker should have been here is that's good culture, baby. That's good supporting your teammate. But of course, Mizzou's going to have a pro day, and then Johnny Walker's going to be there. And I'm sure there's going to be some NFL scouts there, considering Mimbu and Burden and Cook now are kind of garnering some buzz. And certainly Mimbu's looking at as a first-round draft pick. They're going to go to pro day, and they'll see Johnny Walker, and we'll probably get some rave reviews from him there. So it's going to be fun. I'm just curious, how many guys that get drafted this year, from this team, a transformative team that took them to multiple wins, 21 wins in 2 years. It's when you think about like the 08 class, Chase Daniel, Chase Kaufman, a lot of those guys, some of them got drafted, a lot of them didn't. Same for 13 and 14. You had a few guys get drafted, but not many. Is it different now? Is it different in 25 than it was in 14 and 8? I don't know, but certainly the buzz is around Mizzou, which is really nice. But yeah, we'll see what happens. We got ways to go. We'll get to the draft as we get closer to it. But we want to talk about grading cards, because you know what? We're getting towards the end of school. Finals are coming up, spring break's coming up, and then finals. And of course, Nathan Hurst has been doing his grade cards for the staff. For Mizzou, and we're going to wrap this one up. We did the defensive side, we did the offensive side. So of course now we got to go to the head chair, and we got to take a look at Eli Drinkwitz. And Hurst is going to put on his spectacles, straighten out his tie, put on his tweed coat, and slap that blackboarding and walk us through the grades here. So what do you got, Mr. Hurst?
For the head coaching position, I really broke it down to 3 different areas where I was kind of evaluating his performance. And we could talk about if you thought I missed anything or left anything out. But I think in the modern day college football head coach job, as it is, or at least the job description as is for Eli Drinkwitz now, I figure that there are 3 main responsibilities for him. Number 1, recruiting. Number 2, culture building. Number 3, on-field success. So in my opinion, all phases of his job can fit into one of those 3 buckets. So I looked at each one of those buckets, evaluated 2024, how he did. This isn't a Eli Drinkwitz in his 5 years at Mizzou grade. It's a 2024 Eli Drinkwitz grade. For recruiting, nothing but an A. I mean, if you look at the classes 2024, he brought in the 20th ranked recruiting class. 20th nationally with an average recruiting composite rating of 89.35, according to 247 Sports. So that meaning if you average the grade of all the recruits he brought in 2024, ranked 20th, 2025, so the class that's coming in now, they'll be freshmen next year, also 20th nationally, in terms of the recruit composite ratings. And you compare that to Barry Odom's final class the year before he was fired, 2019. That was his composite rating for his recruits was 38th. Gary Pinkel, his last year on the job in 2015, 26th ranking. So he's done nothing but elevate recruiting every year. And in fact, I think his worst recruiting year was as good as Gary Pinkel's last year there, which was a good recruiting class his last year before 2015 happened and he moved along. So same with transfer portal. So transfer portal is a part of recruiting at this point. It's just as equally important. And we've had discussions about, where it fits regarding or alongside high school recruiting. But he's winning in the transfer portal as well in 2024. 14th nationally ranked transfer recruit composite rating. 2025, number 6. So the 6th best average transfer recruiting composite for this past year coming into 2025. So considering this is Mizzou, we historically have not had top 25, top 20 recruiting classes ever until Drinkwitz got here. This is an A. He has done it. He earned his A in 2025 or 2024, moving into 2025. I don't expect him to do any worse moving forward. He seems like he's only building momentum in that area. So, passing with flying colors on the recruiting side of the ball for sure.
Yeah. I still can't believe it sometimes. You and I and our early Nation Mizzou fandom, we would get excited by a single 4-star recruit. Every recruiting class with Pinkel was, man, I can't wait to see which one of these guys breaks out because I haven't heard of them. We're fighting off Toledo and Purdue and NC State for guys. And it's like, oh, well, yeah, okay. We'll see him in a couple of years. It's going to be cool. Jeremy Macklin was a big deal and rightfully a big deal, but that was, oh my God, a 4-star receiver, but your greatest quarterback of all time was a short 3-star kid out of Texas who most guys wanted as a safety or a receiver. Some 2-star nobody out of Jasper, Texas turns into an NFL linebacker. You were banking on these guys to be good, but nobody else in the country thought they were any good, to the point where it almost became a meme. And if Missouri offered a overlooked guy, the big schools would come in and try and poach him, trying to come in late. And then, that would bump their recruiting ranking. So I still have a hard time to believe that recruiting is doing this well. And I never thought, Mizzou could ever do that, but here we are. Eli Drinkwitz is doing it. And I think a lot of that has to do with, the NIL laws of the state, helping to keep local kids local, but also we're pulling kids from Pennsylvania and Florida. I think really he values recruiting for himself, but also for his staff. Look at Jacob Peeler, look at Curtis Looper. These guys are aggressive recruiters, and their skill set as a coach is not bad, but I think he brought them in for their recruiting acumen, and it's paying off. So I agree with you. He has found guys who are aggressive on the recruiting trail, and he has done a really good job of locking down local kids, changing laws to keep it going, and making an impact to the point where we're bringing in top 20 classes, which is insane still. So I am with you. That is if you want to make it A+, it's A+. I'm good with A. He's doing it great. That's a strong suit. He's doing great.
I remember in 2010 how excited I was when Marcus Lucas committed as a 4-star receiver over to Mizzou over TCU. And I think he was the only 4-star in the class. And I was so pumped. Yes, we got a 4-star receiver. This is great. He went on to be a great Tiger, had a good career at Mizzou. But now it's kind of weird if a guy, they get a commitment who's not a 4-star, right? And there'll be a few 3-stars in the upcoming class. But it's almost like, oh, he's not a 4-star. Wow, that's they must see something in him. So the norm has become bringing in 4-stars, which has been pretty wild. Still haven't quite gotten used to that. Next responsibility, culture building. And building a positive culture within the program is really vital for long-term health of the program. And it seems like Drinkwitz is pretty invested in building a culture inside of his locker room. Now it's really hard for us outside of the locker room to really be in there and really know what it's like. But based on everything that we've heard the last couple of years that's come out of that locker room before games, after games, in the offseason, you mentioned Luther Burden calling out the scouts for not inviting Johnny Walker to the combine. The culture that he's built in his locker room, they call it the brotherhood. It seems like he is really in the last 2 to 3 years found a way to congeal that locker room into something that is bigger than just the individuals as a part of it. And they all seem to be pulling in the same direction. Now, that wasn't necessarily the case when he first got here. And Brady Cook has been pretty candid about that earlier in this last season, talking about how the first couple of years that Drinkwitz was on the job, there was not a great culture inside. And what maybe was that some bad apples left over from the previous regime? Maybe was it some things that Drinkwitz did or said or didn't do that contributed to a poor culture, perhaps? And I think we saw that on the field quite a bit too, in 3 straight 500 or sub 500 seasons. But whatever the problem was, he's figured it out. And the last 2 years, it seems like they've had a really strong culture, and it doesn't seem like they're losing ground. That said, you lose a 5th-year senior quarterback who seemed like the best leader that Mizzou's had since Chase Daniel in terms of internal leadership. We'll see where it goes from there, because we'll see how much of that culture was a Brady Cook led culture, or at least a senior leadership led culture, versus one that is more in the walls at this point and can carry forward year to year. I think it will, but that remains to be seen. That said, A for culture building for 2024 for Eli Drinkwitz.
Yeah. I would say I would point to bowl games. How many guys sit out the bowl games? Not many. In fact, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I think last year was the first time we had guys sitting out from the bowl game, which was Luther Burden and Armand Mimbu.
And both are going to be first early second round draft picks. So
I was going to say, for very legitimate reasons.
Yeah, those are reasons you were okay. You tip your cap and say thanks for the service.
Yeah, but look at the transfers. I don't look at the transfers out. He has made a culture that's been very clear, right? Production over potential every single time. Bringing competitors, the brotherhood of the wilderness, or whatever he calls it. Like he's got it figured out. And to your point, no, I don't think he had it figured out when he first got here. I've heard stories. I'm not going to repeat them, but like there's a lot of immaturity in that locker room for everybody, players and staff included. And they figured it out. They did figure it out. And I think he has gotten better there, but whatever the secret sauce is, he has it, and it keeps him tight. They show up for bowl games, they play, they support each other across the board. None of these kids knew each other. Well, maybe they did, but for the most part, they don't. And they come in and they get forged into the Drinkwitz, cauldron, and they turn into Missouri Tigers, and they're Tigers for life. So, Theo Weiss talked about the connection he had to this city. He didn't need to talk about that. He could have talked about anything. He talked about how he loved where he was. He loved the school, loved the city, loved the team, and he's coming back. Like, that's a guy who clearly had 3 great years here, who did not pick this school out of high school. Luther Burden picked this school when it was scuffling. This is a crappy little, not even a 500 team when he picked them. And then look where we are now. So like it works. It works. And I don't know how much money has to do with that, but Drinkwitz and his staff have figured it out. So yeah, he's great with culture. I agree with you on that one too.
Yeah, it helps. The money helps for sure. But I'm sure that it does. But you mentioned transferring out. You look at how many, and kind of, in my opinion, a sign of perhaps an unhealthy locker room is, are you having a lot of guys transfer laterally, where they're going to a program that is on the same level as your program, and with some exceptions, which are clearly NIL driven in this past year, where we had a couple players that did make that kind of lateral transition, and clearly both of those are NIL driven. Other than that, you're not seeing those lateral moves. You're seeing guys move in laterally. They're coming from other programs, from West Virginia, from other Power 4, Power 5 teams, Georgia. I mean, I wouldn't even call that lateral necessarily, but coming in, but they're not moving out. If they are moving out, it's either the very rare exception where they're moving up to an LSU or a Georgia, or the vast majority of the guys are moving down because they haven't been able to get on the field and are looking for an opportunity to play. And you can't blame a guy for doing that. So very few of those lateral moves, and I think that's indicative of the culture for sure. So final Final area of evaluation: on-field success. Obviously the coach is responsible for how the team plays, the ultimate responsibility for how the team plays every week and how their seasons turn out. And in Drinkwitz's case, he's not calling the plays on a play-to-play basis anymore, but he's still very much has his finger on that offense. That he does, and he's ultimately responsible for how the defense plays too, even if he's fairly hands-off in terms of how that goes. 2024, we've talked about this for the last full year, well, not quite full year, since August anyway, how the team didn't play as well as we thought that they were going to play. There were some missed opportunities. There were some lots of examples of not really reaching the potential that we felt that this team, this roster, this talent had. That said, this team did win 10 games, and I've said it till 50 times on this podcast. Mizzou winning 10 games is going to be a successful season, no matter what it looks like or who they played, what their schedule was. If they win 10 games in the season, it's going to be a successful season. So on-field success 2024, not an A for Eli Drinkwitz this year, but I gave him a B+ because of the 10 wins. I wrote this report card. It's been now almost three weeks ago. More, I kind of think out loud. I think about it after I publish it. Probably would lower it to a B if I was to rewrite this today. But I'll stick with what I wrote originally. My initial impressions: B+, 10 wins, certainly far above a failing grade. I mean, that if you're winning 10 games, as I said, that's going to be passing every single season. I mean, they could play and move back to the Big 12 and win 10 games and lose to 2 games to BYU and whoever, and it's still going to be for Mizzou. That's going to be a successful season. So B+, we'll stick with B+. I might have, as I said, if I wrote it again, might be a little more harsh, but let the good vibes roll. B+. And then so overall, add them all together, A, B+, final grade for 2024 for Eli Drinkwitz, A-. He gets an A- for 2024. With the caveat that 2025 is going to be a significant departure for him. He's going to have to break in a new quarterback, a lot of roster turnover. It's going to, there's a possibility that it could change quite drastically next year. I mean, and we'll be talking about that all off season. But for 2024, he got in the A side.
Yeah, and I'm fine with that. Let's talk about 2025. I am really curious, fascinated, anxious. I don't know. There's a lot of feelings that are going into this upcoming season, and I don't know. I don't know where everybody else is, right? I know basketball's taking up a lot of oxygen right now, but I don't know how everybody feels about this football team. There are things to feel good about. We highlighted several of them: the culture of this team, the recruiting of this team, the on-field product for the past 2 years. The playoff is going to expand. They're probably going to force feed, 4 SEC teams into there. We're repeating last year's schedule. There are things to like, but you also are losing a ton of NFL talent and you're replacing it with transfers. So, as you look at, go back to Gary Pinkel. When you go back to Gary Pinkel, think of 12, 13, 14, and then 15. 12 was the SEC brand new year, but full of injuries. We never really got to see what that team could do in the SEC. 13 was this surprise breakout where they won the SEC East, lost the SEC championship game late, had a great game against Oklahoma State, but it was low expectations, high joy in the wins that came out of it. And then you lost a bunch of guys, returned a lot of guys, but lost a bunch of guys. And then you did it again. You won the SEC East again in 2014, but you had more losses. You had more frustrating losses. You had more cracks in the armor. There's still good things about the team, but you're like, it's not as good as 13. And then, of course, 15 was full of injuries and the whole thing fell apart. I guess my point is, we've had, this is going to be the 6th season of Drinkwitz. Don't count COVID. You had basically 2 500 seasons in which they lost the bowl game. You had a year where you didn't really expect much. We thought they were going to be good, but nobody else really did. And then they were good and won 11 games and had, beat Ohio State. That was incredible. And then you win 10, like you said, but you win 10 games in the most disappointing fashion possible. And so I'm sitting here going, okay, was that a blip in the climb, or was that the beginning of the descent? And we're not really going to know until this season's over anyway. And even then we might not even know. But what are your vibes around this team right now? How are you viewing where we are in this path?
Hopefully it's not as sharp a descent as 2015. And there's a lot going on off the field that year. There's a lot of injuries, so those are kind of things you can't really control for. No one can control for those things. So hopefully, we just talked about culture that Eli Drinkwitz has built and is building in his locker room. So hopefully that plays a role in keeping things together if they do get difficult off the field. It's hard to say, and honestly, I don't think we're going to know a definitive answer to that until 10 years from now, where we are able to actually look back not only on how 2025 turns out, but how 26 and 27, 28, and really see a trajectory there. I do think that in terms of wins and losses, this program will probably take a step back this next year, just based on all the talent turnover. While the schedule is the same in terms of it just flip-flopped, I feel like it's a more difficult schedule than it was last year. Just because the harder games are now at home, meaning, maybe we have a better chance of winning them, but also if we lose, then those are the home games we've lost. And then we have hard games on the road now. Oklahoma is going to be significantly better, and you're playing them on the road. Mm-hmm. I think the step back on the wins and losses doesn't necessarily mean it's a decline in the trajectory of the program. I think it would look potentially and hopefully look more like what 2010 looked like after 2009 or 2007. Sorry, 2009 looked like after 07 and 08. So the team, Blaine Gabbert comes in for his first year as a starter. The team goes, I think they actually went. They went 8 games. They went 8-4. Went to the bowl game. Horrible loss to Navy. Let us never think about it again. And then 2010, they had a great 10-win season again. So they were back up there, and it starts building. So it was a step back, but it was more of a reload than anything. And they had to reload for a year, get back up into the 10-win range. Then Gabbert leaves, reload. 2011 was still a fine year. I mean, they won 8 games that year. 2012 would have been much better than it was had there not been for all the injuries. And then, by the time Franklin has built it back up, 2013 happens. So, a team like Mizzou is not going to win 11 games every single year, at least, not maybe in 20 years when we get to the recruiting level Georgia has. So you can have 2 consecutive 10-win seasons and then not have to blow the whole thing up, take a step back. And if a step back is 8-4, and that setting yourself up then for another 10-win season the next year, I think you're on the right track for kind of the level of program that Mizzou is right now. So that's kind of where I'm looking at it. We're not going to win. I would be very pleasantly surprised, but surprised nonetheless if we win 10 games next year. I think we're looking more at an 8-win team with the hopes that you kind of bring in the new guys, get them acclimated, get them figured out the system in 2025, so that 2026 you're loaded and ready for bear again.
Yeah, there's so many things I want to talk about. Barry Odom never felt like he had something going. Like 2018 was a good year, but it always felt like it was a product of something else. It never felt like Barry Odom had put something together that was good,
Well, anytime that in 2018, anytime they feel like they were on the precipice, something bad would happen. Like they would have a stupid loss because of something stupid, and then it'd feel like it would set them back again. There was no and progress isn't linear, but there was no direction toward we do this and then we won that and that was a big win. Now we're gonna we can go and get this next step and the next step. They just never quite did it.
But like Gary Pinkel fielded teams that, and maybe this is just ignorance of youth on my part. And now I'm a jaded old man, but like Gary Pinkel felt like he put out teams that could dominate. Not all the time, but like you felt like he knew exactly what he was doing and he had a team that could win almost any game. And you felt it. I felt that in 07. I felt that in 13. You just looked at them and you're like, oh my God, yeah, we have a chance in every game. And they did. They did. Because he had this team that was, maybe they're punching above their weight, but it was a great team. And it felt like they could play with anybody. Maybe not beat anybody, but they could play with anybody and keep it close and probably win. Never felt that with Barry Odom. With Eli, though, it's either by design or by just end product. The margins are so thin. It just feels like every Eli Drinkwitz team, it's like, if this hair falls 1 millimeter to the left, we lose. And that's, it doesn't feel dominant. Maybe that's my problem. It doesn't feel dominant. The talent level has taken an extreme increase from the Pinkel and Odom years, no doubt about it. And we've had some tremendous wins, but Drinkwitz teams don't score more than 40. They don't blow teams out. He's played 62 games. 26 have been decided by 8 points or less. That's 42% of the games are decided by 1 score or less over 5 years. It just feels like, oh, you're just right on the line. It doesn't feel like he's got complete control of the product on the field. It feels like it's a lot of luck. And that might just be me being ignorant of how he wants to play football. Run first, second, have your defense win the game, keep it close, win it late. Like maybe that's just me not comfortable with that style yet. But it doesn't feel like he has a dominant team. It felt like it in 23 because they won 11 games, but like it put Georgia to the test. Like, but she just every other year, it just hasn't felt that way. And it didn't feel like that last year when he returned most of the offense from 23. So it's like my confidence is not as strong as it was with Pinkel. I guess that's my takeaway here. And so it's really hard for me to kind of project out what's going to happen. Is this razor thin margin? Is this just a product of him building and bringing in talent and relying on transfers and like they're not going to click? So you kind of have to have these weird years where you can't really do everything that you want to do until the second year the transfers click. Like I don't know what that is. But I don't have a lot of confidence that like, oh, for sure, even if it's a blip, like it's going to get better. I don't have that yet. And that might be a me problem, but like, does this make sense? I just don't feel like he has dominant teams. I guess that's my problem.
I mean, I think 2023 had some dominant moments. I mean, the Tennessee game was dominant, I feel like. At least, yeah. So I mean, they had some dominant moments, but I agree. I think a large part of that is by design in terms of just how he wants to run his team in game. It kind of feels like a lot of times they don't have that killer step on your throat, put the team away. There are many times all season this past year and in 2023 too, where in games where they would end up winning anyway, but they'd win by 8 points or 10 points. Where like if you get the defense gets a stop, you're up 8 points. If we go down and score a touchdown right now and stomp on their throat, we can put this game away now in the middle of the third quarter, and they're not going to have. They're not going to have a shot at that point. And, like Mississippi State this year, they kind of did that. But Mississippi State is the worst team in the SEC. So, you would hope that they would be able to do that.
Also, they didn't score 40 points against Mississippi State. They scored 39.
Right. But yeah, it's like he not only is content, but like wants to keep it close. Even like wants to be as dominant as he can while the game is close. And that's, as you said, it's a razor's edge when you do that, because one fumble, or one blown coverage, and all of a sudden, the game flips on you, and it can go the other way. It is not a comfortable watch. Mizzou has never been a comfortable watch under Eli Drinkwitz, no matter what their final record is. And I'm kind of starting to think that that's just how it is, how it's going to be.
Maybe that's what it is. It's comfort thing. I'm never comfortable watching Mizzou.
Yeah.
I think that might be it. Yeah.
And
I do
it
think
could
it's
be a lot
plausible.
more comfortable if they would just step on a throat now and then and went up 10 points and got with the ball. Don't settle for a 58-yard field goal. Instead, go for it on 4th and 1 to really put the game away and score a touchdown and go up 17 late in the third quarter and know that this game is out of hand now. And they just, those little things that could, put you over the top. He's content with not doing.
Okay, let's do a thought exercise. What are Mizzou's best wins under Eli Drinkwitz? You mentioned Tennessee. That was 36-7. What are some other great wins for Mizzou?
Ohio State, Cotton Bowl against
Okay.
Ohio State.
Okay. 14-3. Okay.
I mean, are you referring to like teams that wins against really good teams?
You define it however you want to define it. What are the wins that stand out in your mind?
So those two for sure. I mean, it's hard
Kansas
to say.
State? Kansas State?
Yes, yeah, you have to say Kansas State. You definitely have to say
30-27.
Yeah.
And they had to get a 65-yard field goal after they screwed up the timeout down situation. 30-27. Kansas State. Okay, what else you got?
I mean, those are the best teams that they've beaten, I think, in the last 2 years, bar none. I mean, other good wins, like it's not going to sound like it, but beating Memphis last year was a good win.
Yeah,
that was a good win.
Beating Memphis was good.
That program is good. They were even better last year than they were in 2023. But they ended up winning 9 or 10 games in 2023. So
they did.
That was a good team.
34-27. Memphis scored 14 points in the fourth quarter.
Yeah. So that's an example of Mizzou was poised to dominate that game, and they just didn't step on their throat at the end. I mean, they were going to win. I was never scared that they might not win that game, but it could have. All it would have taken is one more bad thing to happen, and it could have easily flipped. So I would say Memphis was a good win. Oklahoma this year was really, really ugly, but playing with your backup quarterback the whole time, I'm going to call that a good win.
Yeah, needed a strip sack fumble. Return for a touchdown to win it. That was
pretty.
It was not pretty, and that was a score of 30-23.
Yeah. So, I mean, Vanderbilt turned out to be a good win this year.
It did. Yes. 2 overtimes, 38-27. We needed Vanderbilt to miss a kick in the second overtime. I think you're getting my point here.
Yeah, absolutely. And those good wins are all close and could have flipped on a made field goal from the 25-yard line or whatever for Vanderbilt was, something easy like that could have easily flipped.
They beat South Dakota in 23, 35-10. Didn't look super great to it. And now obviously Sam Horn was taking snaps there, so maybe that's part of it. Middle Tennessee, 23-19. You can look at Florida, 33-31, a bad Florida team in 23. Vanderbilt in 2022, 17-14. Arkansas in 22, 29-27. Maybe your argument is, oh, well, they're great teams because it was, these are great wins because it was really competitive at the end. Sure, yeah. Missouri should have blown some of these teams out. With the talent discrepancy, they should have done it. And again, either by choice of style or just quality of play, they don't do it. They don't score more than 40. They don't beat you by more than 8 points. They just keep things really close. It is uncomfortable. And so it makes me feel uncomfortable. And therefore, when you do a reset like this, when you get a brand new quarterback, brand new running back, brand new slot receiver, brand new offensive line, brand new defensive ends, I'm going, oh my God, even when you had everybody that you wanted, you're eking out wins. And now we're resetting. I think that's my problem. It's uncomfortable, and I don't know where that's going to lead me. I don't know what's going to happen because of it.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. That's the biggest reason I think we're going to take a step back this year. That doesn't mean we're not going to go to a bowl game. I mean, I think 8 wins is the mark. I mean, I think whether that's 7-5 and then a win in the bowl game, or 8-4 and then who knows what happens in the bowl game. I think that's kind of that 8-win mark is where I'm at least setting my expectations. And to be honest, I would consider that a successful season considering all the new faces that are coming on, with the caveat that they then need to have a better season in 2026, because I kind of view 2025 as not a rebuild but a reset, because they are resetting a lot of this roster. And if they can reset but still win 8 games at Mizzou, that's going to be, it's going to be challenging because of the style of play, because of the schedule is a little more difficult. But that's kind of needs to be the expectation, at least in my mind.
Okay, so we can't see the future. And I'm not asking this question with your ability to see the future or even think about what happens. I'm just asking you, sitting here March 6th at 8:54 in the PM, how important is next season?
It it's important to it's important for Drinkwitz to show that what he's built wasn't a fluke or a flash in the pan, a 2-year blip, and that would happen if they go 5-7, or and miss a bowl game, or even 6-6 would be honestly could open that door, because then have recruits and transfers, potential transfers looking at the program. It's like, are they trending where I want them to be trending? They had a nice peak there, but maybe that is just that, it's a peak. There was a weird early NIL. Mizzou was on the forefront at the beginning, and now the field has caught up. A lot of questions open up when you take a big step. So
Yeah.
it's not a big important year that they have to win 10 games, but they need to prove that, they need to show that this program is here to stay. It's going to be competitive in the SEC on a year in and year out basis, even if it's not competing for a playoff spot every single year.
Boy, I just hearing you say that, and how many factors go into success. That's not even just the wins and losses on the field, or sorry, what the wins and losses affect. Let me ask you a different question. Is every year important in the modern college football era?
I mean, yes, because it's serious, highest level of college football. When we're looking at a program like Mizzou and building, trying to build and reach the pinnacle. It's kind of different, because like at Georgia, if you say, is every year important is every year important at Georgia? Yes, 100%.
Yes, because you're Georgia.
Is every year at Ohio State important? Yes, 100%.
Yes, they're Ohio State.
Is every year at Mizzou important? Yes, but not at the same level. Not at the same level. Whereas you can take an 8-win season at Mizzou, and it's not going to be a disaster, as long as it's not then followed up by a 7-win season and then a 4-win season. You need to be showing a direction. A program like Mizzou needs to be showing a direction. And even if 2025 for Mizzou is a reset, that is, they're showing that, okay, we reset, we still were competitive, but here's our direction. We've reset it, and we're headed in this direction, wherever that direction may be. Hopefully it's up. So it's important, but it's different.
It's all, you can't have any off years. I was on SEC Mike Bratton was kind enough to have me on his show the other day, and he was asking me about Eli Drinkwitz's stance of production over potential. And I told him, like, my formative college football brain was formed around, peak, dip, rebuild in 2 or 3 years, peak again, and then rebuild. And I'm still not used to every year we're pushing for the playoff. I'm not used to that. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying I'm not used to it. And so given the kind of moves that Mizzou made, like they did not take a lot of 1-year rentals in the transfer portal this year. I'm not saying they took none. Obviously, Kevin Coleman's only here for 1 year. That Keegan Trost kid's only going to be here for 1 year. But like they invested in a potential multi-year starting quarterback, a running back who has 3 years left, an offensive lineman who's got 3 years left, defensive ends who have multiple years left. Like they did not just take 1-year rentals. So I think the transfer portal shows a little bit of building for the long term. But here's my mostly rhetorical question. What is Mizzou left to build to? Like, you've got the NIL financing. You're improving the stadium, which, one might argue, well, you shouldn't be doing that in the NIL era, but this is what it was earmarked for. You seemingly have a war chest that you can play with to pull players to your program. You're rebuilding the infrastructure, both from like the inside of the program and the outside where they play. You are exceeding at the recruiting, the high school recruiting level. you can argue about the talent evaluation, but from a rating standpoint, you're almost there. You're top 20 now. You are excelling in the transfer portal. You just won 21 games in 2 years. What are we building to? At this point, it kind of feels like we have it, and now you just need to get championships out of it. Am I simplifying this too far? Like, where else can they go?
I mean, because they can get better. I mean, last year they didn't make a 12-team playoff, which was in the realm of possibility for this team to get, and they didn't get there. They weren't good enough to get there.
But they had the stuff to get there, though, right?
Right, and they didn't. So that's what you're building for, is to be in a consistent level year in and year out, and not 2 years out of every 4 or 5 where you then need to take that reset I was just talking about and rebuild out. Build it to the point where you can be a Georgia, a Texas, a Ohio State, where you are able to not reset every year. You're able to reload every year, where every year, no matter who's leaving and who's coming in, your expectations are to win the national championship. Now, are we anywhere close to that level? No, but that's where you're trying to build. And you're trying, and it's holistic. I mean, you're building up the stadium to raise revenue, because Mizzou is the second worst revenue generating program in the league that they're competing in. And
yes,
you're not going to get to that top end level unless you're bringing in at least middle of the pack revenue. Even getting to Arkansas levels of revenue would be great. And because we're way below them, and they can't really compete very well in the current climate. Somehow we've outpaced them despite the fact that we're not making as much revenue. So building up different avenues and different ways of creating that high floor right now. Right now,
sure.
I mean, that's something that Drinkwitz has done a great job of in the current climate over Barry Odom for sure, and it's something that Gary Pinkel did in the Big 12, was raise the floor of this program. Because before Pinkel got here, the floor was hell, right? I mean, the floor is as low as you can get. Kansas from 2015 until 2021, that level of bad. That was the potential floor. The floor is here now. I mean, it's way up high. But if you're trying to get to where you're building to, the floor and the roof are very close because they're way up high. Georgia's floor and their roof are very, very close together. Ohio State's floor and their roof are very close together. That's because the floor is so high. And that's what you're building for. You're building to raise your floor to the level of, your floor is 10 wins a year. Your peaks are 13, 11, 12 wins, make the playoff, make a great run at a national championship. So
I mean, obviously the answer is more money. Okay. But I just don't know what else you can build. Like, the culture's there, the players are there, the facilities are there, the end product was there for the past 2 years. What are the chances that Laird Veach says, I think you have everything you need, and the reason we're not making the playoff, in whatever 2 and 4 years or 3 and 4, is because of you, Eli. And so then my question is, what if this is maxed out? What if we're never going to be, a revenue generating school that competes with even Arkansas? What if this is maxed out? And I don't know what the answer is at that point. It's just, I'm getting very existential at this point, and that's probably not the point of this podcast. But it's just things that I'm thinking about, because there's a lack of comfort and assuredness with this football team's product. They win games despite everything, without looking overly impressive while doing it. And everything has been lifted under Drinkwitz. Everything has improved. Wins, recruiting, money, investment. Everything is improved. Everything is improved. So now we're just gunning for that playoff. And if he's not getting it, then I wonder if it's him. And I don't know how long he's got until we get to that point. So that brings me back to my initial question of how important is this season? Every season is important, because we have elevated Missouri's status in every facet possible. And at some point, you're going to have to see the results that the money wants. And if they're cool with 10 wins, like I'm cool with 10 wins, even if it's not a playoff, then fine, we're good. But if somebody starts, rumbling for a playoff appearance and he can't do that, then what? Or win a playoff game, then what? Or God forbid, win the SEC or at least play for it, then what? I don't know what that answer is. So I think truly it is in 2025, and kind of going in the modern game, every season is the most important season, even if you're trying to rebuild. And so, yeah, I hope he figures it out, because I don't want to find out what happens if it is a 6-6 year or a 7-1 year. I think at this point, I don't know what is the win basis for panic. Would it be 6? Is that kind of like the most wins you could get while being like, I feel bad about this?
Panic? No, it would have to be 5. I think it would have to be 5 wins to panic.
Yeah.
But even then, in the current NI or transfer portal era, you can flip a big chunk of your roster in an off season and look very differently. So, God forbid that this team goes 5-7 and Drinkwitz sees that there are 20 guys on his roster that are not should not be on his roster for whatever reason.
Yeah.
He can dump those guys and he can bring in 20 other guys as long as the NIL money is still there. And now that's a question: if they go 5-7, will it still be there? Hopefully for at least 1 year it would be. He could, you could reload real fast and go look at the basketball team. They went from 0-19 in the SEC to a top 6 seed in the NCAA tournament in 1 year because they brought in 5 transfer studs that are great. And basketball's different because there's much smaller rosters, but just do that 20 times instead of 5 times on football, and you might be going somewhere. It also could then crash and burn and be you end up with 2 wins like Florida State did this past year. It could easily go that direction too, but it's very volatile. Back to one final point about what we're building to. I mean, ultimately, I think it's creating a consistent brand awareness for what Mizzou football is and establishing Mizzou's brand as a consistent 10-win program, if not every single year, 3 out of every 4 years, because that's where you try. I mean, because you're not going to tap into that blue blood level. We all would love Mizzou to be a blue blood in college football 30 years from now. You're not going to get there until you do that for many years in a row. And it's got to be consistent. It's got to be excellent. And that's what you got to be building towards. Very difficult to do. Virginia Tech tried to do it, and they got pretty close. But they didn't quite get there, because then as soon as a couple bad seasons go and their coach retires, then they're back down to the back here with the rest of us at the any season they could go 6-6, or a good season's 8-5 for them. So trying to do what they weren't able to do, and could Eli Drinkwitz be our Frank Beamer? I hope so. That would be great.
Oh yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, work here for 25 years, retire here. Yeah. I don't know. I don't want to sound like a bummer. I'm just, I ask these questions because it's hard to tell. And there is a lot of volatility in the sport now, because you can flip rosters and guys move all the time. And so you're kind of a different product every single time. But yeah, it's gonna be very interesting to see what happens this year. Just there's a lot of uncertainty at key positions. The schedule last year was not as easy as people thought it was going to be, and then you get to do it again. But to your point, like I said, schedule change, roster change, so it's tough to tell when you're sitting here in March. But it's every season is important in my book at this point, and I am cool with the rebuild. I don't know if I'd be cool with 6 wins, but Eli Drinkwitz has always qualified for a bowl. That's 5 straight years of him doing that. So I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt at this point. I think he's going to find a way to get to a bowl, certainly. And 7-8 wins with a lot of transition on the roster, then I think that'd be a win. And if you can keep that around for the following year and make a push, sure, it'd be great. It's just you don't have. I feel like you don't have those rebuild. It doesn't feel like you have the freedom to rebuild at the same level or the same comfort level as you did even 14 years ago. So that's just my curiosity about the 25 season and how it plays out. So
yeah, the money in college football now exponentially more than 14 years ago.
For sure,
exponentially more. And money is not patient. This type of money, this 1 year contract NIL money is not patient money. So yeah, every year is important because that money could easily be gone the next year.
Absolutely. No. Hope that wasn't too much of a bummer. things can happen. We just, you want to think about the long term as well, and kind of figure out how this whole thing stacks out. And we still don't know. So it's going to be a ride that we all take together. But that's going to be the show for today. As always, we appreciate the downloads and the subscriptions. You can leave a comment or rate us. We love all types of feedback from you all. You can follow us on Twitter at Matt and H.E. Edwards. He's at Burst to Hearst. And of course, you can follow the Rockin' flagship at Rockin' Nation and the podcasting outlet at Rockin' Radio. And of course, if you're on Blue Sky, a bunch of us are over there too. We appreciate you tuning in this time. We'll try to do better next time. And until then, MIZ.
ZOU.